The stale, recycled air of Orlando International Airport hung heavy with the scent of coffee and hurried travelers. Lucas, 20 years old and brimming with the nervous energy of a budding tech prodigy, checked his watch for the 10th time. His flight to Seattle, a crucial journey for an upcoming investor meeting, was already boarding. He clutched his minimalist backpack, a stark contrast to the bulky carry-ons of the vacationers around him, and made his way to Gate 42. His boarding pass, proudly proclaiming first class, was a testament to countless late nights coding and a recent modest investment round. He envisioned the comfortable seat, the quiet, the opportunity to review his presentation one last time. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, the rhythmic hum of the plane's engines grew louder, a promise of swift travel across the continent. Upon entering the cabin, Lucas headed directly to his assigned first-class seat, 2A. But as he approached, his brow furrowed. An elderly woman with soft silver hair pulled back in a neat bun was already settled in his seat. She was meticulously organizing a small worn handbag. Lucas paused, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. He double-checked his boarding pass. 2A, definitely. Excuse me, Lucas began, his voice polite but firm. I believe you're in my seat. The woman, Sarah, looked up. Her blue eyes, though tired, held a gentle kindness. Oh, dear me, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice a soft murmur. My husband, Richard, he's the one with this seat. We got a bit mixed up. She gestured vaguely towards the economy section. He's not very good with crowds, you see, and his back, well, it's not what it used to be. Just then, the last few passengers shuffled down the aisle. Among them was an elderly man, Richard, moving slowly, a slight stoop in his shoulders. He wore a simple, faded baseball cap and a veteran's pin on his lapel. He squeezed past the galley and into the economy section, his face a mixture of discomfort and resignation as he navigated the narrow aisle. Lucas watched as Richard wedged himself into a middle seat between two boisterous young men, their laughter echoing a little too loudly in the confined space. Richard's shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the seat back in front of him. A pang of something unfamiliar twisted in Lucas's gut. It wasn't pity, not exactly, more like a sudden, sharp awareness of a reality far removed from his own meticulously planned existence. He glanced from Sarah, whose worried eyes were now fixed on her husband, to Richard, who looked utterly out of place and visibly distressed in the cramped row. The thought of his comfortable first-class seat, now occupied, suddenly felt insignificant. Without much thought, Lucas made a decision. He walked past Sarah, ignoring her confused gaze, and approached Richard's row in economy. The two young men on either side were engrossed in their conversation, oblivious. "Excuse me, sir," Lucas said, leaning down slightly. Richard looked up. His eyes, though clouded with fatigue, held a spark of surprise. "My name is Lucas. I think there's been a mistake with the seats. Your wife is in my first-class seat. I'd be happy to switch with you." Richard's brow furrowed. "Oh, no, son. You don't have to do that," he mumbled, his voice raspy. "I'm fine here." "No, really," Lucas insisted, a genuine smile forming. "It's no trouble at all. I can work just as well from here, and you look like you could use the extra space." He didn't mention the boisterous conversation or the cramped quarters. He just looked at Richard, his expression earnest. Richard hesitated, his gaze shifting from Lucas to the two men beside him, then back to Lucas. A flicker of gratitude, raw and profound, crossed his face. He seemed to weigh the offer, the quiet dignity of a man who had seen too much contrasting with the genuine kindness of a young man he had never met. "Well," Richard finally said, a small weary smile touching his lips, "if you're sure." "Absolutely," Lucas affirmed, already reaching for Richard's small carry-on. "Let me help you." As Richard slowly, carefully began to unbuckle, a flight attendant who had been observing the interaction from a distance approached, a curious expression on her face. Lucas simply offered her a reassuring smile and a nod, indicating the impromptu seat swap. The flight attendant, a seasoned observer of human nature, seemed to understand. The exchange was swift and remarkably understated. Richard, with Lucas's gentle assistance, rose from his cramped seat. The two young men next to him finally noticed the commotion, their chatter fading into bewildered silence as Richard slowly made his way towards the front of the plane. Sarah, still in Lucas's first-class seat, watched with wide eyes as her husband approached, a mixture of relief and confusion on her face. "Richard, what?" she began, but he simply offered her a tired smile. "This kind young man," he said, gesturing back to Lucas, who was now settling into the economy seat, "insisted on switching with me." Sarah's eyes found Lucas's. He gave S a small, reassuring nod, then began to unpack his laptop. The gratitude in her gaze was palpable, a silent thank you that resonated deeper than any words. Richard, with a sigh of relief, eased himself into the plush first-class seat, stretching his legs out. The quiet comfort was a stark contrast to the noisy confines of his previous spot. Lucas, meanwhile, found his new seat surprisingly tolerable. The two young men who had been occupying the adjacent seats had fallen silent, their earlier boisterousness replaced by a subdued contemplation. They had witnessed the exchange, and perhaps a small seed of something, respect perhaps, or a nascent understanding of empathy had been planted. Lucas opened his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his focused expression. The hum of the engines was a steady drone, and soon the plane began its slow taxi towards the runway. The flight attendant, a woman named Brenda with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached Lucas's row. She paused beside him, a soft smile on her face. "That was a very thoughtful thing you did," she whispered, her voice low so as not to disturb the other passengers. Lucas looked up, a slight flush rising on his cheeks. "It was nothing, really," he murmured, genuinely embarrassed by the attention. He seemed uncomfortable. Brenda simply nodded, her smile widening. Some people don't see the value in such gestures anymore. It's refreshing. She moved on, but not before giving him a knowing look. The plane continued its journey to the runway, the announcements from the cockpit a muffled backdrop. Lucas immersed himself in his work, lines of code and financial projections filling his screen. Yet every now and then his gaze would drift forward towards the first-class cabin. He could see Richard, now visibly more relaxed, chatting quietly. With Sarah, a rare smile gracing his features. It was a small satisfaction, a quiet warmth that settled in Lucas's chest, surprisingly more fulfilling than the prospect of a comfortable flight. Outside, the bright Florida sun beat down on the tarmac, casting long shadows from the wing of the aircraft. The pre-flight checks were complete, the cabin doors were secured, and the pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm and professional, announcing the final preparations for takeoff. Lucas, however, couldn't shake the image of Richard's initial discomfort, the tired slump of his shoulders. It was a subtle but pervasive feeling, a reminder that even in the rush of modern life, small acts of human connection held immense power. He closed his laptop for a moment, letting his thoughts drift, the anticipation of his meeting momentarily eclipsed by the quiet significance of the exchange he had just facilitated. He leaned his head back, feeling the gentle vibration of the engines as they powered up, ready to propel them into the sky. The plane rumbled down the runway, the engines roaring to life as it gained speed. Lucas felt the familiar push against the back of his seat as the aircraft lifted off, soaring above the sprawling suburban landscape of Orlando. He gazed out the window as the houses became miniature, the cars mere specks, and the world below transformed into a vast, intricate tapestry. The initial discomfort of the economy seat had faded, replaced by a quiet contentment. He knew he'd made the right choice. After the "Fasten Seatbelt" sign had been turned off and the cabin crew began their service, Lucas noticed a slight stir in the first-class cabin. Brenda, the flight attendant, was speaking quietly with the pilot, her gestures indicating towards Lucas. He dismissed it, assuming it was just part of their routine. He pulled out his noise-canceling headphones, ready to lose himself in his work. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, and the captain's voice, usually reserved for routine announcements about altitude and weather, came through, clear and amplified. Good. "Morning, ladies and gentlemen," the pilot began, his voice carrying a warmth that was unusual for a standard flight announcement. "This is your captain speaking. I rarely interrupt our flight with personal messages, but something quite remarkable happened during boarding that I feel compelled to share." A ripple of curiosity spread through the cabin. Passengers looked up from their books, their screens, their conversations, a collective hush falling over the aircraft. Lucas felt a strange sense of unease, a premonition that this announcement might in some way involve him. He hoped he wasn't about to be reprimanded for something. "As many of you know," the pilot continued, "our flights are often packed, and sometimes the comfort of our passengers can be a challenge. Today, however, we witnessed an act of profound kindness that truly exemplifies the best of humanity." Lucas felt a prickle of recognition. His heart began to beat a little faster. He saw Richard and Sarah in the first-class cabin, both looking towards the front with puzzled expressions, then glancing back at Lucas, a faint smile on Sarah's face. Before takeoff, the pilot went on, his voice gaining a deeper resonance. "A young gentleman in first class noticed that one of our esteemed veterans, a gentleman who has served our country bravely, was in a less than comfortable situation in economy. Without hesitation, and with no prompting from the crew, this young man, Lucas, offered his first-class seat to the veteran." A collective gasp, then a soft murmur, spread through the cabin. Heads turned, eyes searched for Lucas. He felt a blush creep up his neck, wishing he could disappear into his seat. The two young men next to him, who had been quiet since the seat swap, now looked at him with newfound awe. "This selfless act," the pilot's voice boomed, "is a powerful reminder of the respect and gratitude we owe to those who have sacrificed for our freedom. It also shows us that even in the busiest of times, a simple act of compassion can make a world of difference." The pilot paused, letting the words sink in. "On behalf of the entire crew, and indeed on behalf of our veteran Richard, I want to extend our sincerest thanks to Lucas for his incredible gesture. It's moments like these that truly make our jobs worthwhile and remind us of the good in the world." Then, to Lucas's utter astonishment, the pilot concluded, "Let's all take a moment to reflect on the power of kindness, and perhaps find opportunities in our own lives to extend a hand to others. Thank you." A beat of silence hung in the air. Then a ripple of applause started, first from the front of the plane, then spreading backward. People were clapping, some murmuring words of appreciation. Lucas looked around, overwhelmed. Richard, from his first-class seat, gave Lucas a solemn nod, his eyes filled with a deep, quiet appreciation. Sarah blew him a kiss. Lucas, still blushing furiously, offered a small, awkward wave. The spotlight, though brief, felt intensely bright. The rest of the flight passed in a blur for Lucas. The applause eventually subsided, but the atmosphere in the cabin felt subtly changed, infused with a quiet warmth. Passengers occasionally glanced his way, some offering small appreciative smiles. The two young men beside him struck up a conversation, asking him about his work, their previous boisterousness replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. Lucas answered their questions, surprised by his own openness. Richard and Sarah, meanwhile, enjoyed their unexpected upgrade. Lucas could occasionally see them through the partition, chatting animatedly, sometimes pointing in his direction with soft smiles. It was clear that the simple act had made their journey infinitely more comfortable and memorable. As the plane began its descent into Seattle, the rain-swept landscape appearing through the clouds, the captain's voice came over the intercom once more, announcing their arrival. Lucas gathered his belongings, feeling a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. He was eager for his meeting, but the weight of it seemed lighter now, balanced by the unexpected turn of events. When the plane finally touched down, Lucas waited patiently for his row to deplane. As he stepped into the aisle, he saw Richard and Sarah waiting for him at the entrance to the first-class cabin. Richard extended a hand, his grip firm. "Lucas," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "thank you, truly. That was something else." Sarah embraced Lucas, her eyes glistening. "You have no idea what that meant to him," she whispered. "He's been through so much, and a simple act of kindness like that, it means the world." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. "It was nothing," he repeated, though this time he knew it wasn't true. It was something. It was a moment of connection, a reminder that empathy, even in the fast-paced world of technology and ambition, had its own profound value. As they walked through the jet bridge, Richard shared a small personal detail about his military service, a brief glimpse into the sacrifices he had made. Lucas listened intently, recognizing the weight of the veteran's words, the quiet strength that emanated from him. He realized that this wasn't just about a seat. It was about acknowledging a life of service, a life that had contributed far more than any tech innovation could. At the baggage claim, they exchanged farewells. Richard and Sarah were met by a waiting family member, who immediately noticed Richard's relaxed demeanor and the satisfied smile on Sarah's face. Lucas, meanwhile, hailed a rideshare, his mind already shifting back to his presentation. But with a new perspective, the Seattle rain greeted him, a refreshing change from Orlando's humidity. As he rode to his hotel, Lucas reflected on the unexpected turn his journey had taken. He had given up a first-class seat, a symbol of his hard-earned success, and in return he had gained something far more valuable, a profound human connection, a renewed sense of purpose beyond his own ambitions, and the quiet satisfaction of having brightened someone's day. The pilot's announcement, though initially embarrassing, had solidified the moment, transforming a simple act into a shared experience for everyone on board. Lucas knew that this flight, this interaction, would stay with him, a quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest leaps forward aren't made in code or in boardrooms, but in the simple, powerful act of reaching out to another human being. He felt ready for his meeting, not just professionally, but with a renewed sense of himself, a young man who understood that true progress was often measured not just by personal achievement, but by the impact, however small, he could have on the lives of others.